Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're making a new tool, our own tool. I don't know that I've ever seen one like this before. There probably exists, but I don't know about it, so it's new to me, and I'm taking credit for it if it doesn't exist. Stay tuned to find out what it is. Okay, so this is one of my hand planes. It's one of the ones I use most often. And this is my planing stop. It's a 1/2-inch piece of pine screwed to the end of my workbench. When I need to plane a board, I throw it on my bench, push it up against it, and then I can go ahead and plane. One of the issues though is anything thinner than a 3/4 of an inch, or roughly, when you start getting down to a 1/2 inch, you start getting to the edge of this, and I start winding up hitting this with my plane, which is no good. So how do I combat that? Usually what I do is take a 1/4 inch piece of MDF, put it up against the wall, and then put my piece on top of that. And now I've got an extra 1/4 inch of space. However, I have a problem. Lately, if you've been watching most of my videos, you'll notice that I've been making a lot of smalls projects, right? And because of that, I'm starting to work with wood that's thinner than a 1/2 inch. And when I get down to a 1/4 inch thickness, that planing stop, again, I have the same problem of my plane starts hitting that stop. When I put it up against here, you'll see, boom, right? I'm going to plane this down and I'm hitting my stop. So I've been trying to think of ways to solve this problem, right? And traditionally, there are things called planing stops that go in your bench, right? Usually they'll go in a dog hole or something like that, but they'll just be a little tiny piece of metal that has some teeth on it that you kind of shove the piece of wood into, and then you can do your planing. Where it comes down to issues for people like me who are still learning how to do this stuff, when you get larger pieces of stock, something this wide, and you've got, you know, something as wide as 2 fingers holding it, when you start planing on the sides, you start tending to move that, right? It's gonna pop off. It won't push forward because it's kind of holding it, but you start getting that twist, and that's where things go wrong. So I need a planing stop. My bench, however, because I haven't built my new workbench yet, is just a piece of plywood. So the putting dog holes in it isn't gonna work out that well. And I don't wanna have something in the bench where I'm planing sideways, you know what I mean? So I came up with an idea. I don't know if it's gonna work or not because we're gonna make it together, but I came up with an idea to make a planing stop that's somewhat portable and adjustable. To build this project, I've got a 1/2 inch piece of MDF. I've got a piece of 1/16 inch thick steel that I've had just laying around. It's kind of rusty. So I bought a new doweling jig, and I was kind of playing around with it, but I cut a 20mm oak dowel that I'm going to cut a couple pieces out of. It's kind of a mess, and I was trying to figure out how the hell to work it, but I got enough here that I can use for this project. And I've got a piece of 3/4 inch, just some scrap oak laying around that we're going to use as well. So I'm going along this. I marked 2 inches in from each side, and then 5 inches up from the base for like where it's going to be up against the bench. I started my horizontal lines, and I'm putting them every 2 inches. I feel like 2 inches is a good distance. So from each edge I came in 2 inches. Then from the base where it's going to be up against the bench, I went 5 inches up. I feel like if 5 inches, you're probably going to lose about a 1/2 inch or so, or maybe 3/4 of an inch for the thickness of the steel. So I feel like that is small enough that you can get some small stuff in there and plane it without having to go too far. So I feel like that's a good starting point. Everything after that is 2 inch increments. So every 2 inches I put a line. I'm going to drill all these out now to 20mm holes. All right, all of our holes have been cut. Everything's in line. I did have to start over. So the first time I was marking this out, I had the ruler out of the little groove, and it was actually crooked. I didn't realize it till I drilled the first two holes. One was here and one was like a quarter inch up. That's not going to work. So I had another piece, thankfully. Went through, remarked everything again, double checked everything for square both sides, and then just drilled on my crosshairs all the way up both sides. And I had a sacrificial board underneath just to so I wouldn't be drilling through my bench top. So we've got our dog holes in place. Let's move on to this piece. We're going to mount this on the end, like around like that way or so. If you have a piece that goes all the way and you want to go full length, go ahead. This just happens to be what I have laying around that's just scrap. But I've been thinking about a 45, kind of put a 45-degree angle on the sides just to give it a little bit of style or design, just because this just looks too bulky to me. I honestly don't even think I need this much. So what is this, like? It's about an inch and 3/4 thick or long. I wonder if I just cut this down to an inch, because I probably don't need that much room to catch against the bench. All you need is just a little bit to grab the edge or something to clamp onto. So I glued it on, but I'm also just securing it since it's going to have a lot of shear force on it. Just throwing a couple 1-inch screws in. Pre-drill, if in my case I'm using oak. If you're using pine, you're probably fine. But any type of hardwood or anything you got, obviously just pre-drill it so you don't split the wood. And then I also sunk these screws in a little bit so they won't be hitting anything on the plane. All right, so we've got our cleat screwed and glued onto the back and all of our holes put in. So essentially we can now drop this in the vise, clamp it down, and as we're planing against this, this won't go anywhere, right? I think we're in good shape so far. All right, I got my bench hook on and I marked a 1/2 inch from this edge over to here. I want these dowels to be about a 1/2 inch long, maybe a little bit shorter, but I don't want them going more than a 1/2 inch deep in the hole or they'll be sticking out. So nice. Nice. Okay, so I'm working on this thing out here. It's been a few weeks now because it got put off in trips and stuff. But I'm working on this thing and I'm coming up with ideas, and I've got this dowel drilled, and I put like a hole through it and I put a threaded insert in the bottom and stuff. I just had a brilliant idea. I'm going to throw all this out and kind of start over a little bit, but oh my god. All right. I'll be right back in like now for you, but I got to go buy some parts tomorrow or some stuff and go with a better idea than this wood dowel. I'll be back.
A few moments later.
During this entire process, I was planning to use little cutoffs of oak doweling to put inside the holes. I found center and I drilled out a hole in it. And then the bottom of the dowel, I was going to put these kind of threaded inserts that have like the spikes in them, right? And I was going to hammer that into it. Where did I do it? Right here. So I hammered that in, right? Pre-drilled all the holes so that I was in an attempt to not split. The problem is this was almost the same size. So when I put it in, I can line that back up, but you could see on the sides right there, it started splitting out the wood. And because this was so close to the hole that it's going in, it would no longer go in the hole smoothly in the board. So that was a problem. So I switched over to these smooth ones that don't have the little prongs, and I just super glued them in, right? And that was what I was going to do. I was like, okay, it fits in the board and it goes in okay, but I just didn't like how it was just kind of finicky and it was almost too tight. And I was like, all right, well, I could sand it and make it till it fits perfect. But then I had this idea. So I shopped around on Amazon and started looking around, and I came across these. These are 20 millimeter OD rubber spacers that are 3/8 of an inch thick. So that leaves us an 1/8 of an inch kind of a wiggle room, right? Then I took the same threaded insert that without the prongs. I tried the prongs again, but again, same issue where it started spreading it out and it didn't want to fit. So I went with the smooth one, right? It presses in there pretty good, holds in pretty well, but I think with just a couple dabs here of just some super glue or something, or even just to heat, get it hot or something, maybe a soldering iron, and it would melt that rubber a little bit, that'll lock that in place, right? Then I started off with these screws. So I went through the board, through the metal, our metal piece that we're working on, went through, and this was sticking up. And at first I was like, oh, I want it smoother. So I went out and I got some like panhead style Allen screws, and I'm like, yeah, but then I've got to have an Allen wrench on me all the time when I want to adjust it. I didn't like that idea. So I went back to Ace and found these. It's 1/4-20 little knobs with the threaded insert or threaded rod coming out the back. So now I can just have 2 knobs. Yeah, the knobs are going to be kind of in the way, but I have enough of a span that I could get the plane through the middle and I can just move the board back and forth. And I think this will be real convenient to just be able to unscrew it and screw it. But the pro of having it like this is with the rubber, I could put this in the hole easily. It sits in there comfortably, and just the matter of a few turns, as it turns, this is compressing that rubber and is stretching it. And look at that. Like I can lift the whole board up. That's how good of a grip that has on there, just with maybe a half of a turn. So this is going to be super awesome. It's going to grab it real well, and it's going to allow me to move it around. Plus, I got like a whole box of these things now for like $6 on Amazon next day shipping. So cool. So that is what I've done so far with this. Then, to give you another update, I took our metal piece and I drilled a hole in the center. And I was going to have it where this screw went through the hole, and then that, that's what lined it up. But then I decided, nope, I drilled another one here and here, and I've made this slot on this side. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to drill a hole on the other side. I'm going to drill a hole on the other side right here. And that one is going to be kind of a pivot. And then this side, because of that slot, I can move up and down at least 2 to 3 holes in each direction and be able to do angled pieces now. So I like that idea too. Okay, so the plan is I'm going to drill a singular hole here, and I'm going to have this pivoting. But if you'll notice, this hole is pretty wide, right? Compared to the screw, there's a lot of room in here. So what my plan was is if I drilled just a hole, a 1/4 inch hole for this bolt to go in, as this thing's moving over the years, it's going to wear on my threads. So what I did was I drilled this bigger and went out and got one of these bushings from the hardware store, just a brass bushing. This was too thick though, but it's the smallest one they had. So I put it through the piece and then came around in the back, put it in a clamp, took a hacksaw and cut the back side. So I ended up with a brass bushing that is the exact thickness of our piece of metal. That will sit in there. So all together, we're going to have our rubber washer in there. We're going to have our brass bushing that this is going to slide back and forth on. And then finally, we're going to have our knob that'll be in place. And that will give us the ability, as we rotate this or whatever, to be able to move this up and down wherever we need it while the other side pivots. All right, my hammer, center punch right here. That's a hole. So I've just been taking a piece of wood like that, clamp it up against it to hold it flush in there. And then I can come in here and cut it. So this bushing is just brass, so you just cut it with a hacksaw, just flush up against the metal here. Then I could come in and just kind of file it down till it's smooth with the metal. So let's file some teeth into that, and then we're going to finish this metal in a much better way than just having raw metal on there. So if you see right here, I'm basically going every 1/8 of an inch or so and filing 15 strokes. I feel that's getting me pretty even, and it's starting to give me little kind of sharp points, kind of almost like saw teeth, but instead of going on angles like I would or like a rip saw where it's kind of that, you're doing progressively getting just more straight. These are just straight up and down, kind of like a really terrible dull rip saw. All right, I've got all of the teeth filed, which took probably an hour to do. They're all filed. They're all nice and even. 15 strokes each. Feeling good. I'm going to take it out now outside with the palm sander, put some 80 grit on it, sand it, smooth it down. Then I'm going to bring it up to about 400 grit. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. The finish on it, I ran out of battery and the SD card got full or something when I was filming finishing it. I think the last thing you guys saw was me buffing this out. So I buffed it and then wrapped it. I did a cool thing I've been wanting to try. I've seen it online a few times where I take the piece of metal, after it's been polished, I wrap it in some like blue paper towel, like shop towels, and then I soak the paper towels in that bluing solution, and it gives it a really cool, almost like camo look. If you could see that or not, but it really turned out cool. And then I just went across after that and ran some, I got it real hot, put it on the heat gun and rubbed some beeswax on it, let that dry, buff that off. And then I went through with some microcrystalline wax and put that on top too. And no rust issues anymore. It works really, really well. The little teeth on it are perfect for grabbing wood pieces and not leaving too big of marks or anything. They're not like super sharp or anything, but they're good enough to grab it while I'm planing. I'm just really, really happy with how this turned out. So I'm thinking like, this is the main tool, right? Like you can use this anywhere if you have dog holes. But if you don't have dog holes in your bench like me and you're just using plywood, you can totally do something like this and make just a little piece of MDF. I did kind of ghost in my logo in here, branded it, and then I went through and put about 6 coats of polyurethane on top of the MDF just to protect it a little bit. It's not like it's ever going to get wet if I'm planing. I'm not planing wet wood or anything like that. But just in case, something splashes on it in the shop or something, give it a little bit of that water protection, because if MDF does get wet, it'll swell up in a hurry. So went through and did that, and then I came through when I was done and just took some like 220 grit sandpaper and just went around each one of the holes to just kind of soften the edges so that we wouldn't get any chipping or tear out when I'm moving it around. So the functionality couldn't be any easier. I've got it just resting here in my vise. So you could just set it down. If you want to just set it up against your workbench, you could do that. Obviously, you'd have to cut it long enough or short enough so it's not longer than your bench and hitting a wall if you're up against the wall like me. Or I built it in a way to where you could throw it in your vise and clamp it down, and now you know that thing ain't moving nowhere, right? Then we've got the one side that's our pivot, that's got our rubber going through, and the other side with our slotted groove. I did go through, I'll take that off for a second. I did go through and polish all the brass grommets in there just because I'm extra and I wanted it nice and shiny against the dark metal. So I did that. So it's easy. Basically, you just line this up, this side here, to whatever hole you want. And you can move anywhere from a few inches away from your edge of your bench all the way back to the back if you want. If you have longer pieces, somewhere in the middle, I think is where I've been, roughly as I've been playing around with it. I think it works out well. Now, I do have that built-in adjustability where I built it for if you do have a piece of wood that's on maybe a 45-degree angle or something, you can add that, or you can just loosen this one and move it up a hole or two wherever you want it to go. Tighten that down, and now you've got a planing stop for angled wood. I think that's really cool. I like that. If you have stuff with that maybe points or something coming to a point or any type of angle, you can now plane straight on with the grain of the wood and not have to worry about it twisting against the stop. I think that's really cool. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. So that's it for today. That's how you make a benchtop planing board that's fully adjustable to whatever piece of work you're working on. And it doesn't have to be for just 1/4 inch stuff. That stock will work on, I showed 3/4 inch pieces, 1 inch pieces, whatever you're working on, thickness of wood. This will work really, really well if you don't have a planing stop on your bench. And if you don't want to drill a hole or dog holes or put a planing stop permanently in against your bench, this is a great option to store away afterwards. So if you like this type of content, please subscribe down below, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this. I doubt this is an original idea. I'm sure I've seen it somewhere in my subconscious that I'm just like, oh, I'm inventing this. But if you haven't, let me know. I know planing boards existed back in the day. They were just like a piece of wood, but I've never seen one adjustable like this. I think it's pretty cool. Let me know what you think down below. I'll see you on the next one.